I was talking with a friend yesterday, and she's a school teacher, and she had this happy, blissful look on her face, and she said it was the last day of school today. And as a child, the last day of school was kind of the beginning of summer. Some people say the beginning of summer is the summer solstice. Some people think of it as first day of vacation. But summer is a magical time. It's kind of like Christmas for 3 months when we have family and friends and exciting things happen. And, I see summer when certain things are blooming in the garden and when I have certain tasks that I need to take care of in the garden. And I'm going to talk about that today. So, thought I would show you what's been happening. Now, this time of year, there's a lot of spring cleanup and a lot of pruning of things that have been growing. And what's blooming in the yard right now, you can see in this garden, the red flowers are bee balm, and the pink is sweet peas. The window boxes have the calibrachoa. And there's more over here. Now, there had been, get my shadow out of the way here, down here had been some spiderwort. Cute little bee there. And one of the things that I do to clean up is to cut back the things that have finished blooming. By cutting back the spiderwort, hopefully I'll be able to get another bloom out of it. And this time of year, to get some color in the yard, it's really all about annuals. So our petunias and the plectranthus and little coleus there make a pretty pot. And there is the pink flower is the New Guinea impatiens. Now, what I'm showing you here, this is something called a wattle. It's a small little fence. Usually they were hand woven out of willow or hazel or whatever branches were around. And it's a very, very cottagey thing to do, a very country thing to do. And I've had these for a number of years. And I use them to hold back the plants, because in a shade garden, the plants want to grow out into an area where there's sun, and the only place that doesn't have something blocking the sun is really the path. And so I use the wattle to hold it back. And I was going to buy some more wattles, but the price has really, really gone up. And mine is falling apart. So I used, it looked like, an old rusty piece of iron that I just shoved in the ground and am using to hold it back. Now, over here, this is the bouncing bet, and I've added some more stakes. I just used some stakes that I bought these stakes I actually found in the yard as I cleaned it out, but those are holding it back. So what I did was, here's the same area, what we took care of. There's the stake that I used to hold my purchased wattle, and I added another stake here, and I took a piece of a branch and just set it behind there, and I kind of scooped up the bouncing bet to hold it back, and it looked a little messy, so nothing cleans up the dirt better than just a little bit of compost. So we put a little compost in there, and it looks nice and tidy. Now, the other place that I have a problem is over here. It's kind of sunny. I hope you can see this okay. Growing along here are asters, and these are really tall asters that bloom in late August, September, in the fall, and they get really, really leggy. So I have cut them back, and you can kind of see how I've chopped on them a little bit. That's what I do with my garden phlox, to hopefully cause it to be a little more compact and not quite so floppy. And I have just set in some more stakes and used a couple of long branches to create a little fence there. Now, my husband has been saving long branches, and he had decided that he was going to build a wattle, which is, well, he's pretty funny, but we didn't have enough branches. We don't have a willow tree or anything, so I'll be looking around for more branches. I've got 2 of them in there, and I'll look for a few more, and we'll see if we can't create a tall wattle here to hold back what's going to be blooming and growing. Now, it's also fun to see the buds on the lilies. These are Asiatic lilies, and they're definitely putting on some nice tall branches. Now, I'm going to take a minute here. Those of you that have seen my channel before, have you noticed this? Did you see? The roses are gone. The diagnosis was rose rosette, and I spoke with the foremost rose specialist at the best nursery in town, and her advice was to not plant any more roses in this area for 5 to 7 years. Now, we've not completely finished digging them out, but we definitely cut them back. Now, this time of year, I do an awful lot of cleanup and a lot of cutting back, a lot of trimming. And I'll show you what's actually blooming too. So here is the oak leaf hydrangea, and you can begin to see this is the butterfly bush putting on its buds, and right over here this is a tiger lily. And you can always tell a tiger lily, because you can, I don't know if that'll focus, it's kind of windy here. You see those little black berry looking things on the stem. Those are very distinctive for the tiger lily. And we've been cleaning up a lot. The bulbs, like the daffodils and the tulips, have to be pulled out, so you'll probably notice that there are still some bits and pieces throughout the yard. If you want perfection, go to Disney World. I don't have a full staff, so I have to work on these things bit by bit. Here is, of course, the acanthus. Now, over here, the other thing that dies back, in addition to the bulbs, this plant here is the mayapple, which is an ephemeral, and you can see a couple of the big leaves back there. It dies back, and so when the ephemerals die back, you have to kind of pull them out, and I'll show you some other ephemerals too. There's the other acanthus here. Now, something fun that's blooming right now, that's not blooming, but growing really well, is the elephant ears. They really like the heat, and they like to have a lot of water, so we water them pretty regularly. But what I like about these, since this deck is so much higher than the flower bed, you can't see what's in the flower bed unless you plant things that grow tall. And we've enjoyed in the past having the elephant ears because they come up nice and tall, and you can still see through them. You can hear over here the bird bath, and it's nice to sit on the deck and watch the birdies without having like a big bush or something blocking your view. And here are the Asiatic lilies blooming here. Now getting ready to bloom. Any minute now you can see them. Oh, this one, that's just happened. in the last hour or so that lily has opened up. Now, there was an awful lot of cleanup that occurred under this because I have a lot of bleeding heart growing under here, and if I see some, I'll point it out. It starts to get floppy and yellow, and that has to be cleaned out. Now, the other thing that needs to be done, so a lot of cleaning out of spent plants, and the other thing that's important to do is staking plants. You'll see I've got the monkshood staked since it gets nice and tall. The lilies are staked, and I have stakes in here because a lot of times the elephant ears get floppy too. There's a little bit of coral bell there, and this little daisy-like flower is a feverfew, a little unobtrusive garden flower. That's fun. I'm using New Guinea impatiens in my pots this year, and for some reason it kind of stopped blooming, but it's setting a lot of buds. If you look at the base of each of those leaves, you can see all the flower buds that are coming out, so that ought to be really beautiful in a short time. And now the hose is out for one simple reason. We're in a little bit of a drought here. It's kind of dry, and I have so many water lovers that I water every day, so I just leave the hose out and I water really heavily in one area one day, and I take it to the other end of the garden and water heavily the next day. And so today it was in the front yard, and tomorrow it'll be in the backyard. But you can see how beautiful the blue hydrangeas are at this point. And behind this first one, so the blue are mop heads, and the whites are lace cap hydrangeas. Let me step over here so you can see them. Very distinctive little cluster as opposed to the mop heads. Now, here's a mess. These are not bulbs as such. These are daylilies, and they were here in the yard when we bought the house. And the problem is, let me look right straight up. Where are the trees? Big oak tree and a redbud tree, and it's just a very shady spot. Asiatic lilies can handle shade. Daylilies don't like them. So at some point, I don't know if it'll happen soon or not, but I'm going to dig out these daylilies because that's what happens. They just die back, make a mess on the ground, and then you can see there are some buds trying to set here, but most of them do not have any flower buds. There's just not enough sun for it. So it's a mess, and I'm thinking it would be nice to have maybe some more hydrangeas in there. And I've mentioned before, I'm the one that added the mop head hydrangeas. The lace cap was here, but I think hydrangeas are so nice in the summer because they hold on to these flowers. A year from now I could be pulling off a brown one. So they hold their flowers, they change colors, they're interesting. These will kind of fade and they go pink, they go green, they all go interesting colors. But I think that's about the only thing I could add in here that would have me some good summer color for an extended period. And this is an even darker spot. And again, he had daylilies planted back here, which I've had to pull out. Now, you can kind of see that plant right there. That is a bleeding heart. And you can see how its leaves are yellowing. And I'll just pull him out in a bit. That would be our spring cleanup. I'm sorry, it's cleaning up from spring. It's our summer cleanup of our spring ephemerals. Nice place to sit and enjoy the pretty weather. The weather is still very mild here, but it's been breezy and threatening thunderstorms. It's like every day it says thunderstorms, possible thunderstorms, and we don't get anything. It's been pretty sad. Now, right here, you're going to say, why doesn't she clean that up? That is a mess, but I can't do anything about it. This is where I had a really nice stand of daffodils, and I've been pulling out the leaves as they yellow. You can see a few in there yellowing. And you don't want to pull out the leaves until they yellow, because that is nourishing the bulb for next spring. So I just have to wait and live with the mess, but every day I go out and pull up something out of the yard. Now, something kind of fun that I've done back here is when we bought the house, there was a volunteer holly right down there at the base of the tree. It was about 6 inches tall. And this thing right now is about 5 feet tall. And if I had not been cutting on it, I'm sure it would be 8 or 9 feet tall now. But I'm trying to make it into kind of a lollipop topiary and hoping it'll fill in. And for the first time this year, I saw a little berry on it. So hopefully, you know, I envision this as a holly lollipop with red berries on it in the winter. We'll see if that happens, or I may end up digging it out. Who knows? Now, over here, this is very much a shade garden, and you can see the hostas. So here is a kind of a blue hosta with a large leaf, and he has some white flowers. He's one of the earliest ones to bloom. And then here's one with a smaller green leaf, and he has kind of a pink flower that comes on him. Now, this area it had ivy growing in it. It had volunteer Rose of Sharon, which this is not the spot for Rose of Sharon. It does not bloom. Plus, they get entirely too many, they kind of litter it up. They freely seed all over the garden, which is not good. So these were hostas that were in the yard in other places, and we divided them and spread them around, and they have really done well. And we've added a couple of ferns and a piece of an old root that I thought was interesting. Still not finished with this area, but we'll continue to work on it. Now, if you want to get an idea of what it looked like, this is what it looked like. And I've chopped down some of those shorts, those 12-inch tall stumps. That is Rose of Sharon. And you can see there's ivy and some vinca, and there's spiderwort, and there are violets. And I've added in some hostas in here, but this is kind of a mess. I added that fern also, but this is an area this is where we plan on putting a waterfall. But you can see this was not in good shape. This entire back corner of the house was in poor condition, and you can see there's our new spot for our trash cans, and This spot really didn't have much growing in, a lot of vinca, a lot of ivy, and we've again transplanted ferns and hostas, and it's looking much better. And in the little hay trough, more of the New Guinea impatiens, and hope that didn't make you too dizzy. Down here, these impatiens have done really, really well. Now, I'll walk back up to the front. The roses are gone. And what are we going to put in there? And roses are not an option. So we're thinking about clematis. Maybe do 2 types of clematis. The recommendation was maybe clematis that would bloom multiple times, and put 2 different clematis on each side, and have each of those clematis be ones that would flower twice, so we would get 4 bloom periods. Trumpet honeysuckle is another option. You know, I think I'm just going to leave it blank for a while. I found that if I take my time and do my research, I tend to be happier with the decisions that I make. Anyway, hopefully you're having a wonderful beginning of summer where you are and enjoying the summer plants that are growing. Thanks for joining us, and we will see you next time.